Today, I'm very honored to introduce Dr. Bill Shaw. William Shaw, PhD, is the founder of Great Plains Laboratory, now Mosaic Diagnostics Laboratory. With over 25 years in running Great Plains Lab, Dr. Shaw developed cutting-edge testing such as the organic acids test and has published important research into the adverse health effects of certain fungal and Clostridia bacterial compounds. Dr. Shah is board certified in the fields of clinical chemistry and toxicology by the American Board of Clinical Chemistry. Before he founded Great Plains, Dr. Shah worked for the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, CDC, Children's Mercy Hospital, University of Missouri at Kansas City School of Medicine, and Smith Kline Laboratories. He is the author of Biological Treatments for Autism and PDD, originally published in 1998, and Autism Beyond the Basics, published in 2009. He is also a frequent speaker at conferences worldwide. His collective work in the fields of metabolic diseases, toxicology, laboratory technology, and assessments have served the medical community for decades. And many medical professionals and patient populations, including those with autism, mental health, and neurodegenerative disorders, have all received significant benefits from the information brought forth by Dr. Shaw. He's a personal hero of mine, and his work has been tremendously helpful for my dad and my family. And Dr. Shaw, I really appreciate you coming on for our listeners. Thank you. How are you?
Yeah. Thanks for the invitation, Eddie. I really appreciate it. So I really enjoy. So everything I did, these speaking at these video conferences and also in person it was one of my favorite things. My first public speaking, I was a park ranger at Yellowstone Park, telling the tourists about how Old Faithful works, the magma underneath the ground and all, heating the hot water. And then fortunately, the speakers were about I was using a microphone out in front of a crowd of maybe 1,000 people.
Yeah.
And the speakers were about, 500 or 1,000 feet away. So I would hear my own echo a couple seconds after I talked it. And so it was very unnerving. So my first public speaking event was an absolute disaster. I thought they forgot one thing. They needed to give me a shovel so I could dig a hole and jump into it. So it made it so difficult that hearing the echo after each time I said something,
Yeah.
it just threw your timing off completely. So everything in my public speaking thing has been upward from that point.
Exactly. No, that's great. Well, no, I appreciate you coming on, and this information is so helpful that I think that a lot of people are going to take a lot of great value from this. So yeah, we'll jump into it. How did you get into researching autism, and what led you to developing the organic acids test and founding Great Plains?
Yeah, so it was fascinating. So I was working at Children's Mercy Hospital, the main pediatric hospital, which is associated with the medical school at the University of Missouri. Uh, and uh, so I had been asked to develop the organic acid test, which had been a long time goal of mine. It was really from the beginning of my career. I thought if you develop a test like that, where you're able to test every single chemical in the urine, it would be the most medically useful test there could be, because you could analyze anytime that there's a metabolic abnormality, something becomes extremely high or extremely low. So looking at just the things that are elevated or depressed, you would be able to pinpoint the person's disease and likely to be able to find a treatment for it as well. So that was my goal, and I had set that up at the Children's Hospital. But just a couple, so Kansas City is right on the border with Kansas. And so just a couple miles away, a pediatric neurologist was working at the University of Kansas Medical School, Dr. Enrique Chavez,
Mm.
and he had already set up mass spectrometry for organic acids, and he was able to give me information that was very useful. Uh, but he also knew that I had gotten approval for, more advanced technology. And the big thing was a really enhanced computer system that was very fast and could analyze hundreds of compounds in a short period of time. And not only and analyze them, um, identify them, and quantitate them. So all of that. So up to that time, there was very little quantitation
Yeah.
of organic acids. People just looked at a scan and just kind of arbitrarily decided what was high or low. Um, so after I had set it up, Dr. Chavez had seen two children. Oh, I would guess maybe 5 or 6. They were brothers that were maybe a year or two apart,
Mhm.
and they had a severe abnormality, which was periodic extreme muscle weakness,
Mm.
such that they uh, would try to stand up and their legs would just fall out from under them. And so they had been seen at virtually all of the major medical, like Mayo Clinic and John Hopkins. And
Yep.
so they had a medical record that was about 6 inches thick.
Yeah.
So they had every test possible for causes of muscle weakness, and right about that time, the Children's Hospital tried to recruit Dr. Chavez, and they were successful. So he now came over as a major person in pediatric neurology at the Children's Hospital, and I ran into him, and he said that in addition to um, the severe muscle weakness, which nobody could correct,
Mm.
they also had autism. Both brothers had autism. They also had a severe kidney abnormality,
Mm.
so that there was protein in the urine. So they
Mm.
were being evaluated in 3 different departments. They were being evaluated in the neurology department by Dr. Chavez and by the psychiatry department because of their autism, and also in the kidney department, nephrology. They were being because of their kidney problem. And so I thought this surely is some kind of biochemical defect that's affecting all three systems. And and so uh, I talked to the mother of the two children and explained to her for some genetic. I first, I thought maybe it's a new genetic disease. I said that to find these, you have to sometimes analyze the multiple samples because sometimes the children may only exhibit the biochemical defect when they're under stress.
Mm.
So I said, it's better you can, so just one sample may not be enough. And so after talking, I said, you need to collect several.
Yeah.
So so then the mother disappeared. And then so for a month and a half, I didn't hear anything from her. And then I got a page, please come to the front lab. And there the mother was she had a shopping bag that was completely full of frozen urine samples. And so
Wow.
there was more urine samples than I had ever tested, even an entire month. And so she took me at my word. Not only did she get several, it was a large, I don't remember, 30 or 40, maybe even more. And so it was going to take a lot of work. It's very time consuming. But I talked to our technologist and I said, we need to make sure we every time we do the test, we analyze some of these samples. We won't be able to test it all at one time. It's too, it would be too overwhelming. And so I tested them all, and I was disappointed at first because I thought there's nothing here that indicates a genetic disease. But then when I took their profile and put it on my desk and then put a normal child's behind it, I said, this is completely different than the normal child's profile, completely different. There's all these huge peaks, but all the peaks, when I talk to colleagues all over the United States and at the Toronto's Children's Hospital as well, and they all said, "Oh, that stuff is from the microbial excretion in the GI tract," but they said that stuff isn't important, so just forget it. And of course,
Wow.
so I thought this is a challenge. How do they know that it's not important if nobody tests it and finds out what it is and tries to treat it? So
Yeah.
that became my focus,
Wow.
and and then I had the help of Dr. Chavez, who found that that both children, as you might expect, have this severe hypotonia, and so some of the compounds were completely new to science. So I identified some things that had never been seen before, the 3-oxoglutaric. So there were compounds that were similar to the Krebs cycle,
Hmm.
or not the regular Krebs cycle. So I thought all these things may be from microorganisms that are inhibiting
Yeah.
the Krebs cycle, which is the main way that the body produces energy for all functions, including the muscles and including brain functions. So I thought all of these things may be causing the child's different things. And so we analyzed all the data, and with the new system, I was able to partially identify and then quantitate. And then I also noticed uh, the compound called HPHPA, which
Yeah.
was a
Yeah.
compound. At that time, I didn't know what it was, but it was, it was significant. And so I used advanced mass spec techniques, ones that are never used in the clinical lab, or even the main labs that do commercial lab tests. So
Yes.
they were really like research techniques, and they were very powerful. And so I was able to identify some of the compounds as a new compound that was very similar to citric acid, but wasn't citric acid.
Yeah.
So I thought this can make, since this is the main component of the Krebs cycle, this could be very important. And then later, was able to identify it was called abbreviation HPHPA.
Yeah.
It was a compound produced by Clostridia bacteria.
Yeah.
So all of these things, I kept checking with other labs, and what was surprising, the other labs didn't know anything about any of this stuff. So I thought this is really important, and so Dr. Chavez and I published the work, and I remember the first time we went to a meeting, it was like to present what was in the Autism Society of America
Yeah.
in Las Vegas, and there were about 4 people in the audience. So it was very disappointing. But one of those people was Dr. Sidney Baker, who was
Yes.
one of the founders of Defeat Autism Now.
Right.
And he recognized this and has said, I want you to present this work. We're putting together a brain trust to to look at what might be the potential causes of autism, called Defeat Autism Now.
Yep.
So I was there at the very first meeting of the first Defeat Autism Now organizational first meeting in Dallas. So so that was very good. I got a lot of colleagues who are extremely interested, and 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 also at that time, a Dr. Bernard Rimland, who founded uh, uh, the Autism Research Institute, had published some work about a person called Duffy Mayo, who uh, had developed a severe autism after a bunch of antibiotics,
Mm,
because antibiotics kill all the normal intestinal flora, but
yeah.
frequently they don't kill the pathogenic
Right.
yeast
Yeah.
and bacteria like Clostridia.
That's right.
Sometimes they get a lot worse.
Yep.
So,
That's right.
um, so he was treated because of his frequent antibiotic use. The physician treating him thought he may have developed yeast. As a matter of fact, I think he even had uh, thrush, which
Yeah.
is candida on his
Yeah.
mouth and tongue.
Yeah.
And so he treated him, and he got considerably better after treating with antifungal drugs.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Wow. That's
So that really got my interest. And so the whole autism community was very interested in this.
yeah.
And several different physicians started using the test that I had set up at the Children's Hospital.
Yeah.
Uh, so, uh, and pretty soon, I was getting requests. So, autism was becoming the most common disease that was for which urine samples were being sent in. So,
Wow. Wow.
so it became very exciting. And then what I found out was interesting was that so we did a large study of 23 children with autism,
Hmm.
and we found that they all had these same compounds that I had first found in these two brothers.
Yep.
And uh, the only thing that was and some of them were getting better after the antifungal treatment,
Yep.
and but some of the chemicals were going up rather than down. Most of the chemicals I found went down, except for the HPHPA, which was from Clostridia bacteria.
Yeah.
So treating with the antifungal actually made the Clostridia worse. And
Yeah.
that was one of the problems, that if you're doing a clinical study,
Yeah.
it's not going to work because most people with autism have both things,
Both.
not just one.
Yeah.
And so if you treat with antifungals, the Clostridia got worse. If you just treated for Clostridia, the yeast got worse.
These got worse.
So you couldn't do a simple clinical study.
Yeah.
So
Wow.
so that was the reason why, some people say, oh, it doesn't work. Well, it doesn't work because you're fixing one problem, but you're introducing another one.
I
So you have to treat both
right.
simultaneously.
Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah. That's amazing. Yeah. Clostridia and Candida competing with one another. Um, yeah, the significance of HPHPA. Um, we know that from your work and your data, it's been pretty prevalent in the labs of individuals um, diagnosed with autism, but there it's also implicated in neuropsychiatric and neurological diagnoses, right? You seeing HP.
Right. Yeah. So it's almost every neuropsychiatric disease.
Yeah.
There's a certain percentage of people, like one of my big finds was in schizophrenia. So
Yeah.
I had a physician who was very interested in the biological cause of schizophrenia, and he was working in Germany. And so one of the big advantages he has is all of his patients were drug-free,
Mm.
because many studies, many people would analyze like all these compounds that they thought were related to disease, and after they tested them and find out it wasn't related to disease at all, it was the drugs they were taking. So they were finding a drug metabolite of a antipsychotic drug or something. And of course, some of these had like 50 metabolites. So it was very difficult. So it was great that this Dr. Gattaz in Germany had the drug-free patients. And so 5 of the 12 people had high amounts of the HPHPA. And then the first clinical trial of this was a trial of one where there was a psychiatrist who had gone to one of my previous lectures,
Yeah.
and after she had gone back, her own daughter had developed schizophrenia, which
Yeah.
the most common symptom is having auditory
Yes.
hallucinations. Like
Yeah.
the hallucination is telling people you're a bad person,
Yeah.
and telling them bad stuff about themselves. The
Yeah.
voice would say that.
Yeah.
Although some of the people also have visual hallucinations as well. This person just had auditory hallucinations. She was 21, and the disease usually happens in young people, like late teens or early 20s.
Yeah.
And so the mother knew that my theory that this was due to the Clostridia bacteria, and she gave her child an antibiotic
Yeah.
that killed Clostridia.
Yeah.
And within a couple of days, her daughter was completely reversed. And so that was published. So, and I mean, it's shameful. There's still people with this that who could get like a extremely fast recovery,
Yeah.
and it's not being used. So this is something that I was hoping, that RFK, Kennedy, as Secretary of Health,
Yeah.
could do something about.
Yeah.
Stop I mean, the American medicine is driven by the pharmaceutical company, so
Yeah. Yeah.
the purpose is not to cure disease.
Yeah.
I mean, the ideal drug is one that only treats the symptoms somewhat, but the person needs it for the rest of their life.
Yeah.
And so that's probably the biggest failure of
Yeah.
American medicine, and that's one of the things was my goal to reverse.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we had there a person who could have been on some antipsychotic drug for her whole life. Instead, she was completely treated within just a few days, and she had the highest amount of HPHPA I had ever seen.
Yeah.
And then the second big finding was finding the mechanism of it. That I noticed that dopamine metabolites got very high
Yeah.
and norepinephrine metabolites were very low.
Yeah.
So these things are neurotransmitters that signal one nerve cell to another.
Yeah.
And so even though dopamine is something your brain needs, everything needs to be in balance. So
Yeah.
these people who had the high HPHPA had huge dopamine levels,
Yeah.
and the high dopamine actually causes brain damage.
Yes.
When it gets to a certain thing, they cause oxidative stress that actually kills brain cells.
Yeah.
And so this I've now found it as I've had reversals of Parkinson's disease. So that's
Yeah.
another one that the HPHPA is very high, and
Yeah.
both the HPHPA and the mold metabolites, the mycotoxins.
Yeah.
And so I'm finding that all the neuropsychiatric diseases, that at least a percentage of them
Yeah.
are due to the dysbiosis. So
Absolutely.
every single person who has ADHD or Parkinson's, and even Lou Gehrig's disease,
Yes.
amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, I recently found they
Yeah.
had some of the highest levels of Clostridia and
Yeah.
mold of any sample I've seen. So
Yes.
I'm quite sure a matter of fact, I want to contact one of the groups and tell them that's something, that the treatments are extremely benign and it's a lethal disease.
Yeah.
So I think that everybody who has a loved one with ALS uh, should be looking at this testing and then treated if they're positive.
Yeah.
It is extremely excited. So,
Yeah.
so, uh, so all of this research really exceeded my expectations,
Yeah. 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 Absolutely. I mean, it's tremendous, this work and all the data that you've compiled. I got to tell you a story. Um, so my father was diagnosed with early onset Alzheimer's in 2018, but all these years, it's been a process of just reaching out to as many different doctors, researchers, scientists, chemists, to piece together what happened and what can be done to help. And so I'll tell you that in 2018, he had probably some mild cognitive impairment. He had been working, he had been independent, but he received two consecutive rounds of antibiotics in April of 2018 for what seemed to be like a flu, right? And
yeah.
after those two consecutive rounds of antibiotics, the cognitive decline was so uh, drastic that is when he started not being able to work. So fast forward just a few months later, by September of 2018, he's diagnosed with early onset Alzheimer's. It's disabled right there and then. So now we're figuring out what we can do to help. Thankfully, we started with the Bredesen protocol for reversal of cognitive decline, which was very helpful. And we're trying to figure things out as we go along. And this is before I got introduced at a deep level of your work in organic acids testing. But I tell you that we life presented a huge obstacle where we were driven to your work because um, in in the by the my father improved a good amount on the Bredesen protocol, and towards the end of 2019 we started an antifungal program. Okay,
Yeah.
and at the same time, we get infected with the alpha variant of COVID in January of 2020. So January of 2020, um, my father starts to develop some very strange, erratic, not him symptoms,
Uh-huh.
neuropsychiatric. By February of 2020, he's sectioned, diagnosed with dementia psychosis. It's completely out of nowhere. Um, Hospitalized, medicated, and I'm scrambling to get him out, get him off the medication, figure out what's going on. And after several months of contacting as many people as I could, I got introduced to your organic acids test. They said, let's test his gut. What do you know? He lights up HPHPA. HPHPA is off, just completely off the charts. Dopamine metabolites off the charts. And he's got yeast too. And we treat the Clostridia and the yeast, especially the Clostridia. The HPA comes down. He loses his dementia psychosis. No more symptoms. They told me he'd
Yeah.
have to be medicated for the rest of his life. They told me that he had jumped like 6 stages in a few months, and he was at end stage.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
because of your data, because of that lab work, we had something we could focus on and influence, and we had something we could work on that would have some sort of beneficial outcome, and it ended up really giving us a new lease on life because how can you help somebody who can't be compliant if they're psychotic? And we were able to take them off all the medication, and we've been trucking along ever since. But very much because of the organic acids test and because of HPHPA being identified, I have to wonder how many people diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease have high levels of HPHPA because I've spoken to many who have had parents and other loved ones be diagnosed and have marked cognitive decline after consecutive rounds of antibiotics. So
Oh, yes, yes, yeah. And so probably a significant amount. And even those who don't have the HPHA probably have the mold and candida. So
absolutely.
the organic acid test, matter of fact, I spent a lot of time with the University of Kansas Medical School and putting together a Alzheimer's study. And everything was approved until when they did the uh, when they did the discussion with one of the groups, they said, "Oh, we think Shaw is getting too much of the credit for it." So they turned it down because they thought they wouldn't get enough credit for it. I wasn't doing this. Of course, they would have been on any papers and everything else. But there's some people that are extremely selfish and extremely stupid. So
Yeah.
turning down after doing all that work and talking to the one who was the person in charge of the whole program, but some lackey
Yeah.
said, "Oh no, KU's not would not be getting enough credit, and Shaw would be getting most of the credit, so we're turning it down."
Oh boy. Wow. Yeah. Well, yeah, hopefully we can get beyond the stars on the chart syndrome and just focus on helping people because I think that's maybe I'm wrong, but I think that's the main objective in medicine. So that's great. Could you talk a little bit about the role in glyphosate and how that may play into gut dysbiosis and Clostridia proliferation and yeast?
Yeah, yeah. So glyphosate is now the number one agricultural chemical in the world. At the same time, one of the major producers of it, Bayer, which is in Germany, it's probably the predominant producer, but it has like something like 60,000 lawsuits filed against it for cancer. But that's not the most important. So I published a paper about a year or two ago saying that it was the major cause of autism.
Yeah.
And so they don't know nothing. So if they're thinking that this is the worst they can do
Yeah.
financially, once the autism people start suing Bayer. I mean, they're going to be in. Well, they likely won't exist anymore
Yeah.
because there'll be so much uh, lawsuit money paid out.
Yeah.
And so the glyphosate, uh, it's a very potent weed killer, but it also kills all the beneficial bacteria in the intestinal tract,
Yeah.
but does not kill Clostridia, does not kill mold, does not kill yeast.
Yeah.
And so all of those things proliferate like crazy. And so the person who had the ALS, the amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, which is a horrible disease where all the muscles become uh, paralyzed until your lungs, give out, and then you die. And so that person had one of the highest glyphosate values that I had ever seen, and so that undoubtedly was the cause. And that same person had extremely high amounts of Clostridia, mold, and yeast.
Yeah.
And so that was what was causing I mean, it's just eventually gets to the point where all the systems in the body are shut down.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. It's
And then so the glyphosate
yeah.
also not only does it mess up the person's microbiome, his intestinal flora,
Yeah.
but it also alters the flora of the agricultural fields. So
Yeah.
the agricultural fields are now full of Clostridia bacteria, and one of the Clostridia is called Clostridia botulinum,
Yes.
and farmers just walking through their fields have developed botulism
Yeah.
just from walking through their fields because the glyphosate has has altered the intestinal flora. So I've sent copies of my paper to Robert Kennedy Jr.
Yeah.
and asking him uh, to for to get the government to get rid of it.
Yeah.
And but haven't got a response yet. I mean, it's a political hot potato.
Yeah.
Of course, I'm living in one of the big agricultural areas of the country, and 99% of the corn now is uses glyphosate, and they even have billboards all around.
Yeah.
Don't let them take your glyphosate
Yeah.
away. You
Yeah.
know, promoting that to the farmers. So it's going to be politically extremely difficult, but the
Yes.
health of the country would completely get better
Yeah.
by removing this from food.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and I'm totally with you. We also I had a Dr. Stephanie Seneff on some time ago as well, who's also a big fan of your work, and yeah, it's so much data has come out, and I'm with you. I'll try to help you on that push to get Bobby to do something here swiftly with this. I know you're not the only one, and there's a lot of people who really would like to see this off the market. It's off the market in many European countries. So it's something. I'll tell you another little quick story about the field workers. These pesticides. We have a strong family history of early onset Alzheimer's in my family, but my great grandfather and his two brothers developed early onset Alzheimer's, and they were sugarcane field workers in Puerto Rico. So they were exposed to atrazine, and then in the early 70s, that was phased out, and glyphosate came in as the cheaper alternative. Um, so their exposure. Now, my grandfather also worked in the tobacco and sugarcane fields, developed early onset Alzheimer's. Um, and, you know, they then changed the diagnosis to Lewy body dementia at autopsy because of all the rigidity and all the Parkinsonian and alpha-synuclein, all of these things. But nobody tested him for Clostridia, nobody tested him for glyphosate. Um, and your testing on glyphosate has been tremendously helpful because it's something that allowed us to, boy, was it hard, but we said, you know what? After my dad tested in the 50 over the 50th percentile in glyphosate, we said we got to go all organic, and it's helped tremendously. And my son, who's 3 years old, tested in the 97th percentile on one of your tests for glyphosate and had been diagnosed with sensory processing disorder. We got him off all of the non-organic stuff, reduced his glyphosate exposure, hopefully eliminated it. Those glyphosate levels came down. He lost his sensory processing disorder diagnosis. So there's something there. I'm not a scientist. I'm not a doctor. I can only observe what's been going on in my family. And I know there's science on both sides of this whole discussion around glyphosate, and I'm empathetic to the farmers. There's got to be a better way. I think we've been poisoning ourselves with this glyphosate, and I can
Well,
tell you,
there are organic farms. There are
yep,
people who are able to sell organic. So there just needs to be a huge research into making this organic methods more available to the bulk of farmers.
yeah, yeah,
Uh,
yeah,
So people had weeds before glyphosate was invented, and so
yeah.
they had ways of treating. They may have to use some of those old-fashioned methods, like machines that pull out the weeds or something like
Yep.
that.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. Cover crops, and there's a lot of things. I think you're right about the political piece. It's the subsidies that's kind of tough, but we'll see what happens to that. Have faith that that'll keep moving in the right direction. Um, and you talk about candida and yeast overgrowth. How can that affect or negatively affect the neurological system?
So the mechanism by which Candida does it is uh, it's so there's a response to Candida when a person's infected with Candida, the body responds by producing a protein called beta amyloid. And beta amyloid is one of the factors that's increased in the brains of people with Alzheimer's. And
Yeah.
so the thought is that beta amyloid, so in addition to being a bad thing, it has beneficial things. Again, it has, if you put candida in a culture and then you add beta amyloid, the beta amyloid kills the candida. So, so it has that beneficial effect, but the negative effect is that it deposits in the brain and so messes up brain function.
Yeah.
And so you have two things. So by reducing the amount of candida, you're stopping the body from producing this toxic beta amyloid.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So that's one of the mechanisms. It's not the only mechanism. So I know of so when I talk to some parents, they would say when I put my child on antibiotics, it was like within hours he was jumping around the room like a chimpanzee. That was the description
Yeah.
because of the candida that the antibiotics induced.
Yeah.
So that's a very common thing that I heard from parents was that it caused a they described it was like a drunkenness, like a
Yes.
person who is completely drunk. They
Yes.
would they would just completely going, out of control with the because of the candida. But the exact mechanism isn't known. But I'm sure I'm sure I could find it. What I need is to do some more research and look at the other compounds that candida produces, and I'm sure it can be found. And so
Yeah.
that was one of my thoughts. Maybe that's what maybe I'll start a nonprofit
Yeah.
lab just to do research on the compounds produced by
Yeah.
molds and candida that affect brain function.
Yeah, that'd be great. I mean, the fungal piece seems to be more and more prevalent, and if any of the data just on my dad helps with the data you're consolidating, I can tell you that my dad also has the homozygous ALDH 2 SNP, so he has trouble breaking down acetaldehyde, which doesn't help when you've got a candida infection. So
Right, right. It produces high amounts of that. Yes.
yeah, yep. So that might be a contributing factor. Um, can you please tell us a little bit about this amazing case study you conducted with Dr. Sid Baker that
Yeah.
led to a rapid autism recovery?
Yeah. So this child had many of the symptoms of autism. He liked to climb on the top of the kitchen cabinets. So like to be in very high places, uh, and didn't have any good speech, uh, and was extremely hyperactive. And so when we tested him, we found on the organic acid test, we found the markers which are called furan compounds, and they were way higher, like at least 10 times the upper limit of normal. And so he was treated with an antifungal drug, and really the parents decided to use a higher than usual dose that's given for a child, 500 milligrams of itraconazole
Hmm.
every day, because he at the lower dose, which I think was 200, he wasn't improving enough. So they went to the higher dose. After 3 months in the higher dose, every single symptom of autism had disappeared.
Wow.
And matter of fact, I thought this is something we probably need to get on 60 Minutes,
Yeah.
of the program, because it is, and then simultaneously, all his mold metabolites, the furans, went to undetectable levels. So there was like a 99% drop in the mold markers.
Wow.
And so, not only did he get free of autism, he became exceptional. So they tested him when he was tested at 4. They said his he was really testing on a six on a grade level equivalent to a 6-year-old,
Wow.
and he became the star of the soccer team,
Wow.
and he learned to play a musical instrument, and and was the and became the top student in his classroom, and not a in a disability class, in a regular class. He
Wow.
was the top of his class. So so not only did he recover from autism, he became exceptional as as well. And of course, this was I've gotten hundreds of inquiries, and there have been parent groups that were set up all throughout the world. Unfortunately, I didn't. If I had been not so busy at the time, I would have said, let's get all the data there about how many recoveries we've, but it didn't happen. But I've gotten feedback that's, that therapy has worked in getting recoveries in some children, but I don't have all the data. It would have been nice
Yeah.
to have all the data. But simultaneously, I was working on my project uh, to indicate how the glyphosate uh, uh, is a major factor, and then the second factor is Tylenol.
Yeah.
So acetaminophen,
Yeah.
and they work on the same mechanism, which is they uh, they stop the activity of a protein called sonic hedgehog,
Hmm.
uh, which is the main developmental protein for the body, but most importantly for brain function.
Yeah.
And so, if it's messed up by the Clostridia
Yeah.
and messed up by the uh, acetaminophen, or of course, the worst case if the person is getting exposed to both acetaminophen and uh, glyphosate, it's going to mess up the function of sonic hedgehog. And a study was done on autism, and the most abnormal the sonic hedgehog, the more severe the autism. So the biochemical mechanism really for essentially probably 90% of autism is now available, and it just needs government support uh, to make the changes. And even if they didn't want to change it for everybody in the United States, pick one state and have one state just give children organic food and not give them any acetaminophen, and then compare it to a nearby state where they have just the regular thing, you would see probably within, I mean, it would take a few years, but it would prove conclusively that those two factors are the main cause of autism.
Yeah. Wow.
So I think probably all autism or 90% of it could be eliminated in 5 to 10 years.
Wow. That would be tremendous. It seems like a big statement, but then when we kind of remove the sensationalism out of what some people have kind of put onto it, it seems pretty simplistic. It seems like through data collection, you've identified some of these key, consistently seen triggers and causes, and it just seems like either eliminating them or avoiding them. Uh,
Yeah.
and the aberrant chemistry and the aberrant biochemistry goes away, and you don't have the symptoms. So it's, I'm totally with you. I mean, I can only imagine what standard of care would be like if the organic acids test was integrated in and was part of something that everybody and every child. Um,
That's what's needed. The Chinese research group who evaluated the HPHPA found if a child had elevated HPHPA, it was 98% diagnostic of autism. So you don't even need to do a psychological testing and everything. If you just did screening for HPHPA on all on all young children,
Yeah.
you'd be able to identify the fact that this child, if not treated, is going to develop autism.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'd love to see how that translates to Alzheimer's. If first neurologist that we had tested B12, TSH, and basic metabolic panel, and that was it. And I can only imagine if they tested for HPHPA. I'd love to see how many people would light that up. Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah, quite a few. So, I mean, so it really exceeded. So, I mean, every single neurologic disease I've seen has been, at least a portion of those have had elevated HPHPA. Seizures,
Yes.
uh, the ALS, the eating disorders,
Yeah.
they have also high amounts of the Clostridia compound.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, and I've got videos of people with Parkinson's,
Yeah.
with severe shaking all over, and
Yeah.
after treating the Clostridia, extremely calm. Not 100%, but like 98%
Yeah.
reduced
Yeah.
without using any drugs other than using the antibiotics to treat the
Yeah.
Clostridia. And of course, we have now, discovery of an even simpler, more effective, and cheaper uh, way of treating the Clostridia, which is using the supplement oregano. It's just
Yeah.
an oregano uh, extract, and
Yeah.
using that, you completely get rid of Clostridia and the spores. So the problem is
Wow.
the antibiotics used, like vancomycin,
Yeah.
kill the Clostridia, the adult cells, but they don't kill the spores. And so when you stop the antibiotic treatment, the spores hatch out and you just start a new crop
Yeah.
of Clostridia bacteria.
Yeah.
Whereas you don't get that with the oregano, it kills both the parents and the spores.
Wow.
So it's extremely cheap, extremely effective treatment for
Yeah.
Clostridia. And it also kills mold and candida. So it's really effective for many of the neuropsychiatric disorders.
Wow. Tremendous. Um, Look, if I'm hearing this correctly as a layperson and a caregiver, tell me if I'm hearing this right. Because a question that's been asked a whole lot, especially the last several months, what is causing the higher rates of autism? Because it seems to be, the number of, it was 1 in 36 and now, or I'm sorry, it was 1 in 10,000, and now it's 1 in 36, but in some places like California, it's 1 in 12. If I'm hearing you correctly, some of these contributing factors seem to be the ubiquitous use of glyphosate in our food supply, uh, the ubiquitous use of antibiotics, and other things like acetaminophen, promoting gut dysbiosis, promoting Clostridia and yeast and mold proliferation, causing aberrant biochemistry that leads to these diagnoses. Is that what I'm hearing? Is that's what could be
Yeah, yeah, yeah. When
the
you look
higher
at
rates?
Yeah, one of the published papers on glyphosate and autism showed that there was like a 99% correlation between the increase in glyphosate and the increase in autism. So 15 years ago, the rate of autism was markedly lower, but glyphosate is extremely successful weed killer.
Yeah,
And so that is just, and of course, it's making people tons of money because not only do they sell the weed killer,
yeah,
they sell the genetically modified seeds
yeah,
uh, to make the crops that are not, the corn and soy that are not killed
yeah,
by glyphosate. So that increase is directly correlated. I mean, to me, it is it is a real shame that this has gone on. To me, this is similar to the thalidomide tragedy of happened in the 60s, I think, where the mothers who took the sleeping pill had deformed children with flippers instead of arms and legs.
Wow.
Uh, and if somebody didn't keep yell and it was a physician whose child was affected that went around and to everybody who had this abnormality and found that it was all being correlated with the use of the sleeping pill, thalidomide.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
So, as a matter of fact, I'm thinking of maybe I should start like uh, a group where you sign in to say you would like the government to investigate and if found likely to eliminate this from the use in food.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
I may do that. I
Well,
may
you
do.
got your first participant here. Uh, great. Well, just as we wrap up here, what's in your opinion, what's the next step every listener should take to improve their own cognitive, neurological, brain health after finishing this interview?
The main thing would be uh, don't only eat organic food. It may not be possible at restaurants. There's only a couple of restaurants.
Yeah.
For example, Chipotle
Yeah.
advertises they only use organic ingredients.
Yeah.
Uh, but when you eat at home, only eat organic. You're going to pay more, but your health and your brain are worth the extra price. Your health is the most important thing, uh, and uh, and so if you have to spend more money because food is more expensive, do that or plant your own garden.
Yeah.
For a lot of things, and then uh, put up some extra things. Make a big garden and then can it and use it for the winter.
Yeah.
Uh, that would be some of the things. Use probiotics on a regular basis that help to keep the gut flora healthy, and really be careful about antibiotic overuse because they alter the flora,
Yeah.
allowing many times the abnormal flora. Or if you have to use antibiotics,
Yeah.
be sure to use the probiotics afterwards to restore your gut flora. So these are things, of course, that I do. Luckily, my wife is on board, and so she only gets the organic food, and that's very helpful.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, and then of course the mold problem is very common. So if you have water damage in your house, be sure to fix it right away. If you've got mold in your house, you need to treat it. You need to get rid of it.
Yeah.
It's expensive,
Yeah.
but again, your health and your brain are very expensive too. And
Yeah.
so they're worth the effort. So those are some of the simplest things. Matter of fact, the mold thing is talked about in one of the early verses of the Bible. It
Yes.
has, it
Book of
has
Leviticus. Yeah.
Yes, it has, I think, 4 pages in the Bible
Yeah.
that say if you have black or red or green stuff growing on the walls of your house, to call the rabbi
Yeah.
and have him to inspect it.
Yeah.
And if it's contaminated,
Yeah.
then bring it to the dump and get rid of it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
so the earliest chapters in the Bible even talks about this
That's right.
being an important thing for all people.
Yeah.
So I think that having this recommendation by God is a good recommendation.
Yeah, I think so. And I think we're going to have to do another one of these interviews just on mold because that's a whole nother deep subject that's
Yeah,
affecting
yeah,
everybody. But we didn't have enough time to get into it because you got so much valuable information. But yeah, no, thank you for mentioning all these. And as a person, yes, organic, just to echo what you're saying, as a family, it's been a sacrifice to switch over to organic, but we've all felt a big difference. My son's a lot better, my dad's a lot better because of it. And like you said, you either pay for your health now, or you pay for it later. So hopefully, with people voting with their dollars, and hopefully us lobbying people in Washington to clean up the food supply, we won't have to pay so much to have non-toxic food. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, uh,
Okay. Yeah,
yeah,
that's great talking to you, Eddie. I really appreciate it. Great
yeah,
interview.
yeah, absolutely. And real quick, Dr. Shaw, where can people find you and your resources?
Yeah, so I have my own website. It's williamshawphd.org.
Great.
And there is a link there. If they want to email me, they can email me from that website.
Yeah, great.
Uh, and so and if they need help, uh, I'm very cheap. I don't charge for my recommendations,
Yeah,
so I've helped a lot of people with almost any disease
yeah,
need help with. They can go through that website, and they can also find all the articles I've published, and a number of them are in PubMed, so they can get a complete transcript of the articles I've published in some cases.
yep, yep. Great, great. And we'll link up everything on Mosaic Diagnostics as well. Great
Yeah.
Plains. Can't highly recommend this test enough. It's been huge for my family and my dad. So, look, thank you for taking the time, Dr. Shano. You're very busy. You're doing great things. Thank you for all your work and everything you're going to continue to do. Really appreciate you and looking forward to connecting with you down the road.
Okay. Thanks.